Well, who would have thunk it? We're back at it again with another Star Wars RTS. It's been a little bit, huh? While Empire at War is definitely my favourite Star Wars themed RTS that I've played over the years, Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds is not too far behind. But mostly because of nostalgia, I think, but we'll get into that later. And in saying that, there's not a lot of competition either. Despite the myriad of Star Wars games released in the early and mid 2000s, there weren't actually that many RTSs made with the license. So it was more of an inevitability that I'd be covering this game once I decided to jump back into an RTS in the galaxy far, far away. Well, I guess I could have played Star Wars Rebellion, but let's leave that for another video in the future, shall we? Subscribe and let me know in the comments if you want to see that coming down the line. So for those who don't know, Galactic Battlegrounds was released all the way back in 2001, and its expansion, the Clone Campaign's, another 6 months after that. They were bundled together as Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds Saga, and that's what we're going to be playing today. They were created by the gaming division of LucasArts, God rest its soul. If you remember, they handled the bulk of the development of early Star Wars games before the license was diversified to other studios, and Galactic Battlegrounds was no exception. But wait! You're probably yelling at your monitors right now. The Wikipedia page says Ensemble Studios. And come to think of it, this game looks a lot like Age of Empires 2. Yeah, well, there is a reason for that. LucasArts actually licensed the Genie engine for Galactic Battlegrounds, which was the one that was used to make Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2. As this game was released after Age of Empires 2, it's more based on that, and it basically replaced all the historical stuff with Star Wars stuff. I don't mean to be dismissive, there is definitely a bit more to it than that, but in layman's terms, you get the idea. And that explains the game's uncanny similarity to AoE 2. Interesting tidbit is that there were only 3 games ever developed using the Genie engine, and those were, you can probably guess, Age of Empires 2, and Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds. But its similarity can't be a negative, can it? Age of Empires 2 was a great game, and it's one that's aged really well. So if Galactic Battlegrounds is essentially Age of Empires 2 of Star Wars, it's got to be just as good in 2019 as its progenitor, right? Well, it's not that simple. So, without further ado, let's answer the question if you should be playing Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds in 2019. Alright, let's turn this thing on, shall we? Hands up who misses LucasArts. I do, if only for these great little animations on their logo they used to use back in the day. It's a cute little detail that leads you into the opening movie, remember those? Which is really just 2 minutes of low-resolution clips from every Star Wars movie released at the time. You're then greeted by the main menu screen, and wow, that does look like Age of Empires 2, doesn't it? And get used to me saying that, because you're going to be hearing it a lot throughout this video. The game is split between the expected campaign and skirmish modes, with the former being arranged in, you guessed it, Age of Empires 2 style stories that take place across multiple settings with a range of characters. The stories told and they are of course all relegated to the non-canon universe of Star Wars Legends, but they do feature some of your favourite characters from the films, such as Princess Leia, Darth Vader, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Big Boss Nass. Unfortunately, the delivery of the narratives is fairly uninteresting, as it's limited to in-game voiceovers and a few pre-game briefings. And these aren't helped by the fact that the voices are, as you'd probably guess, not performed by the actresses and actors from the films. Take it away, scuffed Mace Windu.
We all feared an unthinkable war, and I could not help but wonder at the losses yet to be suffered. This is a record of one of those losses. His name was Ichu Shanjan, a powerful Jedi Master and a good friend.
Speaking of scuffed, it's time to talk about the graphics. While it shares DNA with Age of Empires 2, there's something about this game that just looks, worse? It definitely hasn't aged well, and I think it comes down to the animations and just overall quality of it all. Things feel very janky, like the animators felt they couldn't make movement smooth because a lot of the units are robots, I guess? One thing to remember too is that this game was released over 2 years after Age of Empires 2, so it was basically dated the second it was pushed out the door. And if you consider the expansion coming out in mid-2002, then this game is going up against RTSs like Stronghold, Age of Mythology, Impossible Creatures, and Warcraft 3, all games that looked markedly better at the time and just hold up so much better nowadays. One thing I can say though is that all the units and buildings do feel very Star Wars-y, and the original assets created for the game that didn't have reference material, like most of the buildings and some of the units, fit their respective factions well. Nothing feels out of place, and the fact that I can look at a carbon and processing plant and clearly tell what faction it's from is something definitely worth commending. Each of the 8 factions does have a very clear visual style, which is a nice differentiator from Age of Empires 2, where a lot of the factions feature the same buildings and unit designs. Another thing worth commending is the soundtrack, which is as Star Wars as it gets. So much so that I'll be floored if this video doesn't get a copyright strike for using licensed music. Though come to think of it, I didn't get one for the video on Empire at War, so fingers crossed we dodge the hammer again. If you thought the game looked similar to Age of Empires 2, then just wait until you play it. I don't like the term copy-paste when comparing one game to another, but if I ever was going to use that term, I'd use it here. End-to-end, Galactic Battlegrounds plays in an astoundingly similar fashion to Age of Empires 2. Menus, game setup screen, technology trees, and of course the matches themselves. After you've chosen your side and settings, you're greeted with the familiar setup of a town centre, a scout, and some villagers. From there you collect resources like carbon, and advance through 4 different technology levels, with each of them unlocking newer and more advanced units and buildings like the powerful fortress and awe-inspiring monument. And from there you're making armies of troops, mechs, and whatever else you like until you can overrun your opponent and send them packing. There are finer details to the combat of course, such as unit counters and faction-specific strengths, weaknesses, and special abilities, but if you played Age of Empires 2, and I assume that if you're watching my channel you probably have, it's all stuff you've seen before. Look, I will give the game credit where it's due. It does include some unique features that make it stand out from its progenitor, such as the inclusion of aircraft, stealth units, and shield generators, but for the most part it's just all so samey. At the time of its release it may not have been such of an issue, but nowadays we have so many different choices as what game we should play, having one that really does feel like a clone of something better doesn't lend well for it being the top pick. And the combat is enjoyable enough, I'll admit. Seeing Star Wars units battle it out is pretty cool, but it definitely gets by more on that novelty than by any unique mechanics or gameplay elements. And you know what, that might be okay for some people, if it weren't for the game's most glaring issue. Good lord, getting this game working on a modern system is a mission. I still haven't quite gotten it down to be honest. So to be clear, yes, there is a digital version of Galactic Battlegrounds available on Good Old Games and Steam, but as far as I can tell it's really just the original game with a no CD patch included, because modern compatibility is, well, lacking. Ancient resolutions and aspect ratios, software lockups, a lack of a mouse cursor, complete temper tantrums if you have 2 monitors. These are just some of the issues I and others have had when trying to get this game running on a modern computer. And even when I did get the game to work, most of the time closing it just left my screen looking like this after I'd shut it down. Now there is a community patch that's supposed to fix a lot of these issues, but I was still left with a ton of things I just couldn't seem to fix. Another way to solve it I guess would be to do what this guy suggests on the game forums and just use a Windows 98 machine. Okay, I'll just pull one of those out of my basement. I also tried installing the Expanding Fronts mod to see if that had helped, but that ran even worse than the base game. Half the time it wouldn't even start, and the other half I either had no mouse cursor, a tiny screen, or both. Maybe you'll have more luck, but the myriad of technical issues I've had with running this game are enough to get me eyeing up whatever my next one's going to be pretty fast. Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds is not a game that's aged well, both visually or technically. While its gameplay can be fun despite its extreme similarity to Age of Empires 2, the overall lack of variety, unique mechanics, and differentiating features don't help in making its case on whether it's worth playing today. The best I can say is that there isn't a ton of games like this featuring the Star Wars universe, so if building bases and armies comprising of familiar characters and units is something you're really looking for, then Galactic Battlegrounds may just be your only option, and hopefully you're not disappointed. But in saying that, you may not even be able to get the game running well enough to satisfy those cravings. The technical issues with running it on a modern system are extremely well pronounced, so much so that for most people I'd just say it's not worth the hassle. At least it is available digitally through Good Old Games and Steam, so if you're up to the challenge, it's not difficult to at least get started. Like I said, while it's familiar to Age of Empires 2, there aren't many Star Wars games like it, so that novelty may be enough for you to get up and try it out. If you're looking for more than that though, I'd leave this one up on the shelf where it belongs. And I mean, if you do want a good Star Wars RTS, just do yourself a favour and go pick up Star Wars Empire at War. It's light years better, and it's undoubtedly still worth your time today. Thanks for watching. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Even if I'm not recommending the game by the end, I still have a ton of fun making these, and I'm incredibly humbled by all the support. whether that's in the comments, on my Discord, the live stream, or even through Twitter. As for the comments, I want to make clear that I do read every single one and reply to as many as I can, so if you ever have a question or just want to suggest a game, then please leave it down below. Even if I don't reply, I'll definitely see it. As for the future of the channel, I've got some exciting things planned in the next couple of months, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about them and talking about them with you soon. Thanks again everyone, and I will see you all next time.